this is going to be a different type of video. I want to talk about something deeply personal that if you're a creative, you probably experience as well. And that is losing the motivation or will to create. Sometimes I sit down, turn on my synthesizers, my samplers, and try to get into a creative headspace. And no matter what I record, it all sounds terrible to me. I can try different samples, different drum patterns, different chord progressions, and no matter what, it's all bad. Eventually, I lose the motivation to create anymore, and I turn off my devices, I delete whatever I was working on, and I go on about my day. And sometimes I notice 3 days, 5 days, 10 days go by, and I haven't turned on my samplers, I haven't turned on my equipment. I've just been avoiding the entire creative process altogether, and it doesn't feel good, because if you like making art, it's supposed to be a fun thing that you do. So I ask myself, why does this happen? What causes me to lose my motivation to create? For me specifically, there's two big things. The first one is self-comparison. That's where I see a lot of these artists that I admire on the internet, on social media. I see them making incredible music, and I think to myself, there is no way, no matter how hard I try or for how long I do this, that I can make music as good as they can. They are simply built different. They're just better. So what is even the point of me trying to make art? This is incredibly stupid. It's not a good headspace to be in. It's also not true, because a lot of the artists I admire and that you probably admire have been doing the process for a lot longer than you or I have. Not only that, they probably have tons of help behind the scenes that we are not privy to. They also probably put in a lot more hours than we have. And even then, our own potential, there's not some sort of cap on it. If you keep trying, if you keep doing the thing and you're conscious about it, you will get better. So comparing yourself the way I do to your favorite artists and thinking that you will never be as good as they are is simply stupid. The second thing is too many options. That's why I had to stop working in Ableton, because you can have an unlimited amount of tracks. You can put in as many effects as you want. You have too many options to be creative. And when you have too many options, if you're someone like me, you get analysis paralysis, which is basically like you have way too many things that you can do. So you just start like thinking, ooh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. Before you know it, you haven't made anything, and an hour has gone by and you're still maybe like looking at a drum loop or chopping something up, and you haven't actually committed anything to audio. The good news is there are ways to deal with both of these problems. I'm going to talk about how I deal with them personally, and maybe they'll help you. For the problem of comparison, I think it's good to, one, have artists that you admire and that influence you, and two, to learn from these artists, to listen to their music and think, ooh, like I like how that sounds. How do they do that? I should try to figure that out for myself and incorporate some of that into my own music. You instead channel it into something productive where you try to, maybe imitate at first the artist that you admire. For me, that's like Jay Dilla drums. I'm obsessed with the weird timings that Jay Dilla was able to come up with, the weird grooves, and I really want to learn how to do my own version of that. Not necessarily do a Jay Dilla groove, but to do an R10 Makes Beats version of something groovy, something that's not so typical. So lately, it's just been a lot of experimentation in drum timing to try and get something a little different. But no amount of admiration is going to simply stop you from having insecurities. And that's where I think it's important that you are consistent, that you turn on your devices, whatever it is you make music on, you do it every single day or as often as you can. Obviously, without feeling any sort of guilt for missing a day. That life is real. You're not going to have the ability to be 100% consistent, but going into every single day with the intention of making art, just making a loop, doing something to get the creative juices flowing, even if you're not making a full song every single day. With this combination of admiration and consistency, I notice I end up having the most fun, and I end up making beats that I think are good, which is at the end of the day what this is about. It's about having fun and making something that you like. Now, the problem of simplicity is much more different. For me personally, this is my solution. It's not just the OP1. I have a bunch of different hardware in my studio that I use, but I brought up the OP1 field because it's so limited in what you can do. You just get 4 audio tracks and you can overdub infinitely. There's a lot of ways to be creative on this thing, but there are also a lot of limitations, which also mean a lot less options for you to get fancy, for you to think about, ooh, what sort of like automation do I have to transition into this other part of my song, blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of that stuff is just not possible, or it's really difficult to do. So you're like, let me keep it simple. Let me just try to get my my beat out and have it sound good. And I can think about all of these more complicated things down the line if I ever get the audio out of this machine. For me, getting out of the DAW and onto hardware that has a lot more limitations most of the time has been a tremendous help. Now, everyone can't do this. Hardware is expensive. Software is infinitely less expensive, but there are ways you can emulate this in software. First is sticking to a handful of plugins. Instead of trying to use the 50,000 different plugins that are out there that you might own, try to use 10. There is no reason why you need 47 different synth engines to make something good. There's also no reason that you need 5,000 different effects. Reverb, delay, chorus, EQ, compression, saturation. There are probably 10 to 15 effects that you're going to regularly use, and sticking within that is going to make the music creation process a lot more simple. And the last thing I'll say is try to limit yourself to some arbitrary number of tracks. Hardware makes this easy. I think the most tracks I have on a piece of hardware is 16. If I can't do it in 16 audio tracks, then I guess I can't make the thing I want to make. But you realize that 16 is a lot of audio tracks. Most of the time I end up using half of that and I have a full beat. So what I think I needed to make a full beat is typically not what I actually needed. So try to limit yourself to a small number of synths, a small number of effects, and a small number of tracks. And the music creation process will become a lot easier. And that's it. That's all I got. It's easy to get demotivated and stop being creative, stop making your art when you compare yourself to others and you just get caught up by how many options you have nowadays in the music you can make. So try instead to channel some of that anxiety, some of that insecurity into admiration, to learn from the artists that you hold in high regard, and simplify your workflow to get more done. That's it. Like and follow, subscribe, do all that stuff if this was helpful, and thank you for watching.